enslavement and harsh labor, only about 500 people survived. Welcome to the history of labor in the United States. Chapter 2. Somebody's gotta work. During the 150 years of the Lacono and Carib genocide, Europeans were moving to North America in ever-increasing numbers. When they arrived, they got right to work. Just kidding. Most of the first settlers weren't the nose-to-the-grindstone type. They were men of leisure who had never picked up a shovel or hammer in their entire lives. John Smith, leader of the settlement of Jamestown, Virginia, had to establish martial law, forcing the colonists into the fields at gunpoint for their own survival. And that survival wasn't easy. Food was rationed because there wasn't much of it. What food did exist was moldy and filled with maggots. If someone got caught taking more than their share, a needle was jammed through their tongue, and they were tied to a tree until they starved. Unhappy with both the working and the starving, the colonists looked for a next steps kind of plan. They decided to go with Christopher Columbus's idea: enslave the people who already live there. But Columbus had done this on an island, with guns and swords against a people who had neither. The colonists' plan was to enslave the nations surrounding them on a large continent, where they were seriously outnumbered. They did have guns, and they did use them to massacre some of the indigenous people around them, in hopes of coaxing the ones they didn't kill into the fields. But those indigenous people just returned to kill them right back. As desperate as the colonists were, they quickly realized the Indians were not the answer to their labor shortage, and eating wasn't the colonists' only problem. Just like the King and Queen of Spain had financed Columbus's trip in return for gold, corporations that functioned very much like our corporations today were forming in England and financing the trips of the colonists with one thing in mind: profit. This new world was supposed to be supplying the shareholders of these companies with wealth. If there wasn't any gold to steal, then the colonists had better start mining stuff, trapping some animals, or planting a ton of crops. But all these things required workers. In a letter to shareholders written in 1616, the Virginia Company promised great profit as soon as there were more hands. After failing to enslave the local people, whose land they were about to start making great profit from, they turned their eye toward folks back home. To quickly sum up the population in England, and Scotland and Ireland, which England owned, these folks were flat out miserable. The old European economic system called feudalism, where the royals owned the land and the peasants lived and worked on it, was dying. The new system of capitalism was rising to take feudalism's place. In the feudalist system, land was used to house and feed people. In the capitalist system, land would be used to produce profit for the people who owned it. Royals kicked the people off the land, built fences or enclosures around it, and filled it with sheep to sell wool. Then they hired a guy or two to tend the sheep. Kicking the people off the land and enclosing it caused massive homelessness. Thousands and thousands of people were now roaming the countryside looking for work. Lots of workers, but not a lot of jobs, meant low wages. And once you found employment, you were locked in because it was against the law to leave your job, no matter what your employer paid you. Servants served masters, said English law, and that was that. If you tried to run and they caught you, there was jail time, a fine, and they cut off one of your ears. Hungry, overworked, and missing a lot of ears, the working class began to come together in order to solve their problems. Today, this is called organizing. But organized labor isn't good for profit. The growing rich in England looked to the New World to drain from the mother country the disaffected and the vicious. In other words, they decided to ship people they didn't like to the colonies. This was easy peasy when it came to anyone in jail, especially anyone who had been organizing labor or had run away from their jobs. The courts simply